what happens?
Absolutely nothing. It weighs maybe 8 ounces, it's light, it's easy.
Right, but what if you hold that exact same glass of water without bending your elbow, without resting your arm for an entire hour?
Your deltoid and bicep are going to start burning. The muscle fibers will begin to fatigue.
And what if you force yourself, through sheer willpower, to hold that same glass of water, arm completely outstretched, for an entire day? 24 hours.
Your arm would be completely paralyzed. The lactic acid buildup would be excruciating. It
Yeah.
would likely cause permanent muscle damage. Your brain would be screaming at you in agony.
Exactly. And here's the profound psychological insight. The absolute weight of the glass never changed.
Never.
It was always just 8 ounces of water. The problem was never the absolute weight of the water. The problem was the duration of the hold. You never put it down.
That is the absolute core of the high achiever's dilemma. It translates directly to neural bandwidth. It is not that the individual tasks you take on are impossible. Comforting a friend for an hour is not inherently destructive. Studying for a biology test is not inherently traumatic. Working a late shift is just a shift.
Right, they're just tasks.
The paralysis comes from the duration of the hold. It is the absolute refusal to ever set the glass on the table, massage your arm, and let your nervous system recover.
I really want the listener to sit with this. Think about how long you have been holding your glass of water. Think about that invisible backpack. Is it months? Have you been holding it for years? Because I talk to people who haven't put the glass down since high school.
Oh, easily.
Is it possible that you are terrified of putting it down because you think your arm is permanently stuck like that? Or that you'll forget how to pick it back up?
Or, to go even deeper into the anxiety of the high achiever, they fear that if they put the glass down for even a second, someone else will snatch it away. Or the water will spill, and the catastrophe will be entirely their fault.
So they just keep holding it.
The anxiety is so deeply intertwined with the action of holding that holding actually feels safer than resting.
And this leads to such a tragic societal misunderstanding. Because when a student finally has that delayed collapse, when they break down a week after graduation, their parents and friends are completely baffled. They say, "Why are you crying? You won. You graduated. You're going to law school. You should be happy."
And that lack of understanding from their support network makes the high achiever feel fundamentally broken. They think, something is biologically wrong with me. I should be celebrating with my friends, but I physically cannot get out of bed. I am defective.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
It is. They fail to realize, because no one taught them how the nervous system works, that they are experiencing the accumulated lactic acid of 4 years of holding the glass.
So, if you are a university student or a young professional, or really anyone caught in this relentless cycle, how do you identify these burnout symptoms before your arm gets completely permanently paralyzed? Like, we need a diagnostic guide to recognizing when the internal allostatic load is becoming unsustainable, because high achievers are really good at ignoring their own check engine lights.
They are experts at it. One of the primary, undeniable indicators of unsustainable pressure is a fundamental shift in how you experience rest.
Okay, what does that look like?
When your nervous system is relatively healthy, rest feels restorative. You sleep for 8 hours, you wake up feeling somewhat refreshed, and you have the capacity to face the day. When you're reaching critical burnout, rest becomes evasive, or it acts like a completely inadequate bandage. You can sleep for 10 hours, wake up, and immediately feel the exact same crushing exhaustion.
It's the buffering brain we talked about. The background apps are draining the batteries so fast that plugging it in doesn't even increase the charge.
Exactly. Your brain is spending so much energy processing the backlog of suppressed stress hormones that sleep just doesn't restore you. Another major symptom is a creeping, undeniable sense of resentment toward the people you supposedly love helping.
Oh, this is a big one.
It is. If you have always prided yourself on being the unpaid therapist, but suddenly you feel a visceral spike of anger or dread when a specific friend's name pops up on your phone screen, pay attention to that.
Right.
That anger is your parasympathetic nervous system screaming at you. You are not suddenly a toxic bad friend. You are simply at absolute capacity. The glass is too heavy.
And what about apathy? Because I hear a lot of high achievers say that the things that used to bring them joy or that sense of intense accomplishment just feel gray. Getting that 98% doesn't feel like a win anymore. It just feels like successfully dodging a bullet.
Yes, the dampening of positive affect anhedonia is a massive red flag. When your dopamine receptors are downregulated from chronic stress, you literally lose the chemical capacity to feel joy. Success becomes nothing more than the temporary cessation of anxiety. So if a student recognizes these symptoms, the unrefreshing sleep, the resentment, the grayness, the required next step is safely sharing that reality.
But that is incredibly daunting. If your entire social identity is, quote, "I've got this," how do you suddenly look your friends in the eye and say, "Actually, I don't got this. I am drowning"?
You start very small. You do not have to unpack the entire heavy backpack on day one. A highly effective, low-stakes conversation starter with a trusted peer could be something like, "I know I usually seem like I have everything handled, but honestly, I've been feeling incredibly overwhelmed lately, and I just needed to say that out loud to someone."
I love the architecture of that sentence because it validates their usual role. I know I usually handle things so they don't feel like they're completely destroying their identity, but it gives them a safe exit ramp.
Precisely. It manages expectations without triggering their fear of becoming a burden. Or, If you need to set a boundary with that friend who constantly unloads their emotional baggage into your backpack, you can use the technique of affirming the relationship while protecting the bandwidth.
How does that sound in practice?
You say, I care about you so much, and I want to support you through this, but my own mental bandwidth is practically zero right now. Can we talk about this tomorrow afternoon?
Oh, that's good.
You are not rejecting the friend. You are simply delaying the transaction until you have the currency to pay for it.
That is brilliant. Speaking of routines, I actually recommend a simple daily routine to safely express those hidden emotions, like a bamboo bending exercise.
I like that.
Yeah, just 5 minutes a day, alone in your room, where you literally write down the most stressful thing you're carrying, acknowledge that it sucks, and then rip up the paper. It's a small physical way to practice yielding to the wind without exposing yourself to the whole forest yet.
That's a fantastic, tangible practice for cognitive flexibility.
But let's flip the script. What about the friends? If you are listening to this deep dive and suddenly realizing, with a sense of horror, that your best friend or your sibling or your roommate is the one holding the glass of water, how do you help them put it down without being intrusive?
That's tricky.
Because if you just march up and try to snatch the glass from a high achiever, they are going to grip it tighter. They will become defensive.
That is a critical dynamic to navigate.
Mm.
You cannot force a chronic high achiever to rest. They will view forced rest as an attack on their autonomy and their identity. What you can do is actively normalize vulnerability within your specific social group. You must lead by example.
Give them permission by showing your own cracks.
Exactly. Share your own struggles openly and without self-deprecation. Say, man, I completely failed that chemistry quiz. I'm feeling really overwhelmed and stressed today. By modeling that vulnerability without shame, you signal to their amygdala that the environment is safe for them to drop their own mask. You are lowering the social cost of imperfection.
You give them permission without giving them a direct order. What about checking in on them directly? What's the best approach there?
Whatever you do, completely avoid the generic, how are you?
Oh, because the automatic reflex answer from a high achiever is always, without fail, I'm fine. Or the classic, I'm fine, just a little tired.
Just tired is the universal translation for, I am chronically overwhelmed, but I refuse to make it your problem.
Right.
Instead of a generic greeting, be hyper-specific and observational. Say, I've noticed you've been working incredibly hard on this capstone project for 3 weeks straight. How are you holding up underneath it all?
That's so much better.
Or, one of those powerful questions you can ask a caregiver. I know you're always taking care of everyone else's drama, but who is taking care of you right now?
Wow, who is taking care of you right now? If someone asked me that when I was in the absolute thick of my own burnout years ago, I think it would have pierced right through my armor. I would just start crying on the spot. It is so disarming because it finally acknowledges the invisible weight.
It makes the invisible visible. It acknowledges the backpack. And sometimes the best support doesn't involve a deep conversation at all. You just offer concrete, low-stakes, unilateral support. Never say, let me know if you need anything.
Because a high achiever will never, ever let you know. They would rather perish than send a text saying, please come do my laundry, I am too depressed.
Precisely. Let me know if you need anything forces the exhausted person to do the cognitive labor of identifying a task, delegating it, and risking the vulnerability of asking. It's a terrible offer.
So what do you do instead?
Remove the mental load entirely. Just state your action. Say, I'm ordering Thai food tonight. I'm having a box delivered to your dorm. Or, I'm heading to the library. I'm grabbing you a massive iced coffee on the way. I'll leave it on your desk. You eliminate the need for them to ask. You just provide the support.
That is such practical, golden advice. Unlearning this habit of endlessly holding the glass and learning how to effectively support the people holding it requires a fundamental rewiring of our brains. But it also requires us to fundamentally rethink our cultural narratives about suffering.
Yes.
Which leads us into the final major exploration of our deep dive. We need to look at ancient wisdom, and we need to confront some truly hilarious but ultimately deeply toxic generational myths.
This is where we must bridge the gap between modern psychology and ancient philosophy.
Yeah.
Because ancient thinkers, particularly the Stoic Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, they had a radically different view of what constitutes a strong human being.
Right. We tend to think of Stoicism with a lowercase s as just being a perfectly smooth, unbothered statue, a robot that feels no pain.
Right.
But actual Stoic philosophy emphasizes that resilience is not the absence of hardship or emotion. Resilience is the ability to experience profound hardship, feel the weight of it, and continue forward with wisdom and perspective.
And again, nature provides the ultimate illustration of this philosophical truth. Think about a devastating, naturally occurring forest fire. It rips through the landscape, burning ancient trees, turning everything to black ash. From the outside, it looks like total irredeemable destruction.
Oh.
But what happens next in the ecological cycle?
After the fire passes and the smoke clears, if you look very closely at that scorched blackened ground, you start to see tiny, bright green shoots emerging from the ash. The fire actually forces certain seeds to germinate.
Yes. And the profound philosophical lesson here is that growth and strength do not always look beautiful. They don't always look like a majestic oak tree reaching triumphantly for the sky. Sometimes growth is just a tiny, ugly, struggling green shoot pushing its way through the dirt.
Yeah.
Sometimes true strength doesn't look like getting a promotion. Sometimes It simply looks like surviving one more day.
Surviving one more day is a complete victory. It doesn't have to be pretty to be profound. I absolutely love that.
Oh,
But it stands in such stark, aggressive contrast to the comedy of generational myths that we all grew up with.
oh, absolutely.
There is a brilliant example of this that I think everyone can relate to, regardless of their cultural background, though it specifically calls out the classic immigrant parent trope.
Ah, the legendary walking to school narrative.
Yes, the
Yeah.
classic trope. The parent looks at their exhausted teenager and says, when I was your age, I walked 10 kilometers to school every single day. And then, magically, the next time they tell the story at a family dinner, it becomes 18 kilometers. And then it was uphill, both ways, in a blizzard, while actively fighting off a Bengal tiger with their bare hands.
It is a universal comedic trope for a reason, but if we analyze the psychology beneath it, it reveals a mechanism of invalidation that is actually quite damaging. These exaggerated legends grow with every single retelling, and what they are actively doing, often unintentionally, is creating a toxic, pervasive mythology that truly strong people never struggle.
It creates an absolutely impossible standard of comparative suffering. Because if your parents supposedly fought a tiger while doing advanced algebra, you feel incredibly weak and pathetic for complaining about a Wi-Fi outage or a stressful midterm paper.
Exactly. It delegitimizes modern psychological and emotional struggles by comparing them to exaggerated physical hardships of the past. It enforces the idea that if you are tired, you are simply genetically or morally weaker than the generation before you. It completely ignores the fact that emotional allostatic load is just as physically damaging as walking 10 kilometers.
We laugh at those exaggerated stories, but here is the really dark side of it. We do the exact same thing to our friends today, don't we?
We do.
We do it to the high achievers. We turn them into modern-day superheroes. We say, oh my God, Sarah's amazing. She takes 18 credits, works a part-time job at the lab, runs the debate club, and still hits the gym. She is unstoppable. We actively build a mythology around them. And superheroes aren't allowed to need a day off. Superheroes don't get to text the group chat and say, I am profoundly depressed.
That dynamic is known as the lighthouse paradox.
The lighthouse paradox.
Think of a lighthouse standing alone on a rocky cliff during a massive maritime storm. The waves are violently crashing against the stone, the wind is howling, the rain is horizontal, but the lighthouse stands firm, casting its brilliant beam into the dark. People stand on the safe shore and admire the lighthouse. They say, look how strong it is, look how reliable it is. It never wavers.
But very few people standing on the shore ever stop to wonder who is inside, freezing, shoveling coal, fighting to keep the light burning.
Precisely. Everyone assumes that the strong thing is entirely self-sustaining. They assume the high achiever doesn't need fuel, doesn't need structural maintenance, doesn't need human support. The assumption of strength actually isolates the individual further. It strands them in the lighthouse.
Because if Sarah, our superhero student, suddenly says, actually, I'm drowning, my anxiety is so bad I can't eat, she feels like she is shattering the beautiful mythology that everyone else has built around her.
Yes.
She feels like she is letting down her audience. She feels like the lighthouse went dark and ships are going to crash because of her.
And that is a terrifying prospect for someone whose entire neurological reward system is built on not letting people down. This is where integrating ancient Stoic wisdom is absolutely essential for survival. The Stoics taught that acknowledging your own vulnerability is not a surrender of your strength. It is the ultimate, most refined expression of
It
it.
takes courage.
It takes far more immense, terrifying courage to look a respected friend in the eye and say, I am failing and I am struggling, than it does to put on a fake smile and pretend everything is fine.
Yeah. Because pretending is the easy default. It's the path of least resistance. It's just following the neurochemical groove you've already carved.
Exactly. True strength, in the philosophical and psychological sense, requires radical honesty with oneself and with the world. It requires the profound humility to accept that you are merely human, that you have strict biological limits, and that carrying the backpack forever will eventually destroy your spine.
So if we recognize that even our heroes are exhausted, if we realize that the lighthouse keeper is running entirely out of fuel, how do we fundamentally change the way we treat ourselves and each other? Like, how do we take all of this deep psychology, the heavy backpack, the buffering brain, the bending bamboo, the delayed collapse of the glass of water, and actually apply it to our lives today?
It begins with a process of deep synthesis. We have to look at the entire landscape we've mapped out.
Mm-hmm.
These are started by identifying the heavy backpack, the invisible accumulation of emotional weight, and the toxic trap of becoming the unpaid therapist to validate our own worth.
Right, the burdens we take on because we are terrified of not being useful.
Then we explored the prison of praise, the cage built by contingent self-esteem and academic expectations, where a 98% becomes a source of existential terror because it threatens the smart kid identity. We saw how external validation traps us in a cycle of unnecessary suffering.
And then we went out into nature. We saw the rigid perfectionist oak tree violently snapping in the wind, while the cognitive flexibility of the bamboo allowed it to survive simply because it yielded. We saw the patient river slowly carving the unbreakable stone, showing us how the allostatic load of chronic, everyday microstressors hollows out our brain architecture over time.
Which brought us to the neurobiology of the delayed collapse, the understanding that the amygdala suppresses our pain during the storm, causing high achievers to break only when they finally reach safe harbor. The realization that the glass of water was never too heavy. It was simply held for far too long without a single moment of rest.
All of these threads, all of this science and philosophy, point to one massive, undeniable conclusion. Strength is not pretending you never hurt. Strength is not being an unfeeling, hyperproductive robot. True strength is choosing to continue after fully admitting that you do hurt.
Right.
Strength is having the courage to put the glass down on the table, massage your aching arm, and then mindfully deciding if you even need to pick that glass back up at all.
And for actionable, lasting takeaways, we can return to the natural world one final time to completely reframe our cultural definition of success and capability. Look at the ocean.
Okay, the ocean.
The ocean is perhaps the most powerful kinetic force on the planet. But it is not powerful because it shouts. It's not powerful because it is rigid like the oak. It is powerful because of its rhythm, because it pushes forward with immense force and then it pulls back. It never stops returning to the shore to gather itself.
Yeah.
Ebb and flow, action and retreat.
It retreats. The ocean actively retreats every single day.
Exactly. And look at the sun. The sun is the nuclear source of all energy for our entire world. It literally keeps us alive.
Yeah.
But it disappears every single evening.
Yeah.
It sinks below the horizon into total darkness. And when it does, no one stands on the beach, points at the sky, and calls the sun a failure.
Right.
No one says the sun is weak for setting. We inherently understand that it needs to set in order to rise again the next morning.
Wow. If we gave ourselves the exact same grace we give the sun, imagine how vastly different our lives and our nervous systems would be.
If you are listening to this right now, and you are thinking of the absolute strongest person you know, or if you are recognizing that person in your own reflection, you need to deeply understand this. That person does not need someone to tell them to be stronger. They do not need another hustle culture motivational quote. They do not need to be told they are a superhuman lighthouse.
What do they actually need?
They just need permission to rest. They need someone to look past the grades, past the resume, past the perfectly curated mask, and say, you can put the backpack down now. I am not going anywhere. I've got you.
They need permission to be a flawed, exhausted human being. To everyone listening, I really want to drive this home. Even the most majestic granite mountains have cracks in their stone. Even the most rushing, powerful rivers eventually slow down and widen out as they reach the sea. And even the most violent, terrifying Category 5 storms eventually run out of rain and pass.
It is the absolute natural order of biological things to experience deep depletion and require deep restoration. To fight against that cycle is to fight against the laws of nature themselves. And nature always wins.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. I want you to really, truly examine your own life right now. Think about the heavy mask you snap into place before you leave your bedroom in the morning. Think about that glass of water you've been holding out at arm's length for God knows how many years.
Reflect on the absolute crushing weight of it.
When was the last time someone looked you directly in the eye, saw past the 98%, saw past the achievements, asked you if you were actually okay? And you answered them truthfully. Not, I'm fine, just a little tired, but truthfully.
It is a rare and terrifying moment of honesty.
It is, and if you haven't been honest lately, if you've been carrying that massive backpack with a polite smile plastered on your face, whose permission are you waiting for to finally put the glass down? Because I promise you, the x-ray machine might be broken, the wounds might be completely invisible to everyone else, but the weight you are carrying is real, and you do not have to carry it all by yourself anymore.
You're allowed to bend so you do not break.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take care of yourselves, check on your strong friends, and we'll see you next time.